This is Think Like an Acrobat, a pro series by CircusTalk, and I'm your host, Shenea Stiletto. Think Like an Acrobat is a show designed to help you as an industry professional keep up with the demands of the market from the perspective of a fellow circus entrepreneur that is willing to share their experiences of the business candidly and openly. My guest on today's show is the creator of AcroGrip, Nathan Price. And today he's going to teach us how to sell for ourselves by mastering the circus product. Hi, Nathan. Thank you so much for coming on to Think Like an Acrobat to help us learn how to sell for ourselves by distributing a viable circus product. Nathan, you are a hand-to-hand artist as well as hand-to-trapeze artist with your newly formed trio Vertex, and you've worked for some of the biggest companies like Cirque du Soleil and the Seven Fingers. You are also the founder of Standing Acrobatics, which has produced the widely successful AcroGrip, the world's first and only liquid chalk designed specifically for the needs of circus artists, acro yogis, and acrobats. I'm excited to dig into what I know is going to be an inspiring conversation. And so I will start with my first dive into the world of circus products with asking, what does the inspiration behind a viral industry circus product look like?
Oh my God, thank you for having me. I'm excited. I was always trying to come up, the whole thing with Standing Acrobatics was kind of trying to develop products initially for kind of the recreational acrobatics scene I was seeing in the US. And then it kind of grew and we were expanding into more professional or more products aimed at professionals. And I was sat on a train going to visit my dad, and I had some liquid chalk in my bag. I was looking around in my bag for something else. And I just realized that this product that we use and that to some degree we depend on for our safety it wasn't made for us. Like most of them, the story as I understand it is it was made as an alternative to powder chalk for climbers because someone thought it would be more convenient, and then it wasn't, and climbers didn't like it. So then weightlifters, kind of people just in the gym picked it up. But it was never designed for us or for skin. So it was always designed for the idea of you're holding onto a barbell or you're holding onto a climbing hold or the climbing wall. And so I wanted to make something that was designed for us and for what we do.
Were there several prototypes that you experimented with to get the formula on par with your vision for the product?
I think realistically, I probably did 30 or 40 versions. So we were touring with Cirque du Soleil at the time, and we were in this tiny little Canadian town, and I went out and found a blender, and there was a big sports store. So I bought just a huge bag of climbing chalk. And then I don't know where I got it from, but I also got some rosin. I think I might have nicked it from the show, actually. So I apologize, Cirque du Soleil, for stealing company property. And then I just sat in hotel rooms on tour like a little mad scientist child, just kind of blending chalk together. And then I would bottle it up, take it into work the next day, give it around to the other artists, and just ask for their feedback. And they liked this one, they didn't like that one. And then eventually I managed to settle on one that was kind of unanimously liked. But yeah, there were a good 40 versions before we got to the good one. And even when we got to the good one, the manufacturer I worked with, they improved it again. The guy in charge of that facility was like, oh, I want to try this. Let me send you a version. And so even my best effort was then immediately improved upon by this chemist.
How should a company handle challenges, if any, during the development stage or in the subsequent increase in circus product demand?
Well, the development ended up being a bit of a nightmare in that I hate phone calls, and I called probably 200 to 250 manufacturers to try and find someone who would make this product or who could make this product, because one of the ingredients is isopropyl, it's rubbing alcohol, which in the quantities that they have in factories is flammable. And so apparently it required specific machinery to deal with, and some places just didn't have that machinery. And then when I did find places that had it, they were like, okay, we need you to order 100,000 bottles and it will be 50, 60, 70, $80,000. And I was like, that's a little high. How about 800? And they said no. And so that kind of cut a bunch of them off. And then eventually I found this one place who he was super nice. And I think what was cool about them is they had done this before for just completely different industries, of someone coming and wanting to work on a formula and work on a product, and they helped me out, and he was like, oh, let me try this, and it was a much better version. But then for the demand side, like once we got it up and running, I had sort of accidentally built this really robust infrastructure, because one of the things I set out to do was I wanted to never have to touch this. Once it was done, I wanted to just leave it alone, and it did its own thing. And so from the very beginning, I had a what's called third party fulfillment. So AcroGrip is stored in a warehouse in the Midwest in the US. And then they ship it. So all the orders that come through the website immediately get forwarded to them. And then it normally happens on a sort of single day turnaround.
With respect to doing things differently with the business model, now that a company has hindsight and so much success, could there be any major regrets that have a cost financially or emotionally?
Oh my God. I have two I can think of. Both of them are just me being stupid. The first one is when I was making these batches and these prototypes, I didn't write anything down. I was just pouring things in, like I wasn't measuring anything. And I would have like 3 versions, and then people would be like, oh, I love that one. And then I'd go home and I'd be like, oh God, how do I make that one again? And so it took me way too long to realize that I should be writing down these formulas. And then the second one is when we launched, I drastically overestimated the cost of international shipping, and didn't realize for a long time, maybe like 6 weeks, that I think at one point, every international order of a certain size, like if you just ordered 1 bottle, I think was costing us about $8. So I very quickly found something that would allow me to set breakpoints on the website. So I think it was different for Europe versus Asia. And if you ordered either enough quantity or enough or a high enough price, like if you ordered enough to hit a certain price breakpoint, then you would get free shipping, but otherwise the website would ask you to pay for shipping.
Can you show us an example of how a circus product such as this is best used during act creation, performance, or training? What are some important components and issues that are solved due to the use of the product?
I have it right here.
Awesome.
I'll have it in front of me and then it won't disappear. Yeah, we use this for everything, but like rehearsal, creation, performance, it's constantly on my hands. And it's interesting because I think anyone who's ever done circus and who's ever held another person, you know when a grip feels good, and you know when a grip feels slippy, and you know what feels solid and you know what doesn't. And the thing that AcroGrip solves is every single time you hold onto someone, it's going to feel good, and it's going to give you that sensation of like, okay, this isn't going anywhere, this is safe. The big mistake I see people make with it, put it here so you can see it, is they don't use enough. Like even Isis, I have to yell at her. She'll put this like tiny pea drop amount in her hands, and you're better off. Well, that's a lot. You're better off doing like a big chunk, because the more you do, the longer it lasts. It kind of sits on top of itself, and then you really want to, for hand to hand, I get it. This is my sweatiest bit, the inside of the wrist. And so you want to rub it so it's like a thin layer and it starts to evaporate. And then you have to do this very dignified dance to get it to dry, where you just do this. And you sit there in training or backstage doing this. And what's happening is the rubbing alcohol that's in it is evaporating and it's leaving behind everything else. So it sort of gets whiter and whiter and whiter as the alcohol evaporates. and the chalk and the rosin and our secret ingredient gets left on your hand. You can, this works too. Like you just had a manicure.
Oh.
And then you'll see what you get is you get a much kind of better coverage, and it's still drying, so it will get chalkier. But it lets the chalk and the rosin and everything else kind of sit on top of itself, and you get really good coverage. And because it's got rosin in, and I don't think any other liquid chalk in the world has done this. I think this was really my accidental genius. Because it's got rosin in, when you sweat, that activates the rosin. And so then the rosin kind of mixes with the chalk, and then you get kind of a double whammy again. So initially it just feels pretty chalky. And then as you actually start to do activity and you sweat and things get a little slippery, it kind of kicks in again, and it does another thing to help keep that grip strong.
Nathan, Standing Acrobatics product is such a solution-oriented product within the circus and acrobatics industries. What are the advantages of supplying such a vast group of clients with something that works so well? Does it leave room for improvement? If so, how have you kept up with innovating a circus product that is already innovating?
So I think you're probably a great example of this, is you as a professional will have used various things in the past to kind of solve this problem that we have of being sweaty and grips not feeling good. And I'm sure you've done block chalk, you've done powder chalk, you've done maybe some liquid chalk. And like you say, you kind of love AcroGrip. And so I think professionals, what's great about them is they have this bar to measure against. You know, like they know what the other versions, what the other options feel like and how well they work. And I've had artists on really big scale shows who say that they will not go on stage unless they have AcroGrip. If someone provides them with something else, then they're like, no, we need to fix this, because of just the difference in quality of how strong it makes that skin on skin grip feel.
Are outside investors key in producing a product, or is sourcing the entire business plan with your own personal funds the better option? How expensive is it to design a circus product?
I wish I had outside investors. That would have been very helpful.
Don't we all?
If someone was just funding my life, that would be great. If anyone's watching this and really just is like, oh, he seems nice, I'll fund his life, that'd be super helpful.
Right. We just don't want to turn into the Tinder swindler.
Yeah, exactly. No, I funded the whole thing myself. So one of the things, and we'll maybe talk about this a bit later, is very early on I read a book called The Lean Startup that it basically is boiled down to whatever your idea is, find the cheapest way to do it and find the quickest way to make what they call a minimum viable product. So it's this idea that it's super important to get an actual usable product to market or to customers more than it is to get a perfect one. And so I think the very first run we did of AcroGrip was literally me blending chalk in hotel rooms, putting it in bottles, and then sending it out to friends. And I think that cost me $300. And then when I had a formula, I sent it to this manufacturer. They sent me a test sample. We sold that test sample to customers. So that section of the development actually maybe turned a profit because they gave me that for free. So whoop, whoop. And then once we had kind of solidified the formula with the manufacturer and I had gone through the process of the branding and the marketing and everything, that's when I put in the first big order. And by what these companies were looking for, it's incredibly small. It was a run of 800 bottles, but that was still a fairly sizable. I think that cost sort of $3,000 to $5,000 to do that run, not including any of the cost for the bottles or the branding or the labels or things like that. But they were fairly low cost in the end. And then once we sold out of the 800 bottles and I knew I was on to something with this, I did another order, and I think that order was about $12,000, and that was for multiple thousands of bottles.
Where do most sales come from? Does a website, events, third-party sellers, or social media see the most traction for product selling overall?
It's sort of our funnel. The way our customers find the product is, for most of them, social media is kind of the jump off point. So they follow us on Instagram or they follow us on Facebook. We have links in the bios and we make posts about the product, and then they arrive on our website. And then they order directly with the website. And there's no third-party seller. We tried that initially. It's just more hassle than it's worth. The funnel I had of social media to our website was so effective that it was, in terms of how much time it took me, it was very hands-off. Whereas doing outreach to venues or outreach to circus schools, that ate up a lot of my time that I just didn't have. So, and it was one of those sort of 80-20 things that I think if you pursued it and you really went hard on it, it could work, but it just took so much longer than just letting the funnel and the web and social media do the job for you.
How could a company handle the branding and marketing of its product? Would you recommend navigating this through traditional product means, or have you found that the acrobatic clientele requires a different strategy in what they respond to in product presentation and interaction?
Our marketing has always been quite weird, and it's always been based on humor, because everyone we're selling to, all of our customers, whether they're a professional or they're a recreational acrobat, they're doing the thing they do because they love it, because they find enjoyment in it and it brings happiness into their life. And so every advert I think I've ever made for this, and you can like barely call them an advert, they're so weird, is they're funny. Like me and Isis, we have like a very specific dynamic together and we have a lot of fun together, and we've just always lent very heavily on that humor in the adverts. And I think there's the sort of altruistic side of like, yes, our customers love what they do and we share that passion and we share that love. But there's also the sort of slightly sinister, underhand business side of that kind of content is more likely to get people to like, share, comment, engage with. And so the very first advert we ever made for AcroGrip, it got like 1,000 likes, it's got a couple hundred comments, it's got a couple hundred shares, and you can pay for that, or you can just create content that people naturally and organically want to engage with in that way. And so we've always made things funny because it kind of kills two birds with one stone.
Should the goal be to have a holistic product? Are there things that a company should be unwilling to do with their product because it's out of line with their brand ethos or ethics?
It's a good question. AcroGrip is a fairly ethically dull product. There's no great ethical question about putting chalk on your hands. But one of the things that I've always stood for and always aimed to engage with whenever I can is sort of helping grassroots movements or community organizations or sort of artists who are up and coming. And so we donate some of the profits to the London Youth Circus, which is where I got my start in circus. I had my entire circus training from the National Center for Circus Arts. When we're in the States, we try and do outreach work with, we've done stuff with like small companies. We've done stuff with small circus schools where we just kind of donate our time and maybe do a little bit of teacher training or things like that. And I think very early on, we donated a big batch of AcroGrip to Circus Harmony in St. Louis, which actually there's a funny story, because so humor is in everything we do. And one of the things I wanted to do with the branding was I always wanted a joke on the bottle. Like I wanted something funny on the bottle. And because the first batch was only going to go to people I knew, I put a fairly risque joke on the bottle. And then Jessica from Circus Harmony was like, oh, could we have some? I was like, yeah, sure, no problem, I'd love to. And so I sent these kids like 10 bottles of AcroGrip with this pretty adult joke on the bottle, and had to message her and be like, actually, you might just want to like tape over that or sharpie that out or something. But there's even, and no one's ever messaged me about this, so this is maybe the first time anyone finds out this is even a thing. The warehouse needed a QR code on the bottle for their own stock keeping, so they could scan it and keep track of how many units are in the warehouse. And I was like, oh my God, that's the most boring thing in the world. And so I put a joke in the QR code. So there's like a unique identifier that the warehouse uses, and then underneath it, there's a joke. And no one's ever messaged me, so I don't think, who in their right mind is bored enough to be scanning the QR codes on AcroGrip? I don't know, but if ever you do, there's like a little one-liner in there.
How important is it to know what else is on the market that may compete with your Circus product?
Yeah, I mean, there's liquid chalk at its base level is a fairly generic product. Most brands use at most 3 ingredients. We use 4. And so there are tons, but the experience that I've always seen people have with AcroGrip is there is a noticeable difference in the quality between the stuff you can buy on Amazon and the stuff you can buy from us. And because I'm a one-man band and it's only our own independent website, we don't quite have that same economy of scale that the stuff selling on Amazon does. But because the quality of the product is so much better, I don't mind, because we've had such good growth from kind of word of mouth of just performers using it, and then you're in training and someone's like, oh, hey, I need some chalk. You give them AcroGrip and they're like, oh my God, this is way better than whatever else we were using. Like, there are some liquid chalks out there that if I see them, I throw them across the room because they're terrible. I've got very opinionated about liquid chalks.
Should a company appreciate negative feedback? And if so, what should they do with it?
Oh man, I secretly love negative feedback more than I love positive feedback. My least favorite part of a show is when people are clapping for me. I'm like, no. I can't improve from this. How do I get any better? And so it's really difficult to know what you're doing wrong if no one tells you. And so from the very, very beginning, I made a group on Facebook with 20 or 30 people in who I kind of considered to be ideal customers, who were people we had met and coached in the US and Europe. And I would just either throw stuff at them, and I would send them some of the blogs I'd written and get their feedback, and they would like rip it apart. They'd be like, this is terrible. This doesn't make sense. I don't get it. But that negative feedback helps you improve the thing you're doing. And on the first run of AcroGrip we did, people hated the lids. And I had maybe given like 3 seconds of thought to the lids prior to this. But the old version we used, after a couple uses, the chalk would dry in the hole. And so you couldn't even open the lid. It wouldn't come out. So you had to unscrew the top and kind of smash it out like a ketchup bottle. And then when we did the big run, I changed the lids. People love the new lids. Who knew people were so opinionated about lids? But that was a huge sticking point for a lot of people. And I would have missed it if I didn't work on this lean startup model of kind of constant iterative improvement, and if we weren't receptive to customer feedback. I had never really felt that was a problem. I could have ignored that, but I had enough voices from the people we were trialing this product with that it was very clearly an issue, and we very clearly needed to do something about it.
Thank you, Nathan, for teaching us how to think like an acrobat. Because to think like an acrobat means understanding the unique needs of the circus industry is the surest way to infusing evolutionary chain reactions that affect generations to come in profound ways. This is the AAA segment, or Ask an Acrobat portion of our show, where I answer questions that didn't make it into the final cut of the interview, or where I share my own reflections on the episode topic as well. So speaking to Nathan Price after this interview was even more inspiring. And Nathan really wanted to stress in a way that he didn't get a chance to overly so in the interview, was that he didn't set out to create a product that was going to go viral or that was going to sell a lot. He really wanted to create something good, because all of the other products that he experienced, he felt were ineffective and didn't do the job well. And he just wanted to improve upon something that was there to give the artists in his environment and within the circus industry something that was safer and something that was better and something that came from us, which I think, again, is so important to remember how effective you can be in this environment that you know so well, because it's a niche environment, it's a very unique environment, and you have to be very much embedded in it to understand it. And no one understands it like us. Nathan spoke about having access as well to potentially expanding AcroGrip and getting into a broader market and using a different company and, partnering and getting on Amazon and having to maybe degrade the product and make it cheaper and liquidate it, and how he didn't want to do that because it doesn't serve the integrity of the product, and it doesn't serve him either because he knows who his audience is, and he doesn't feel that he needs to try and sell the product to spaces that don't need it. Obviously, again, maybe in different ways that'll change for him in the future as he explores options. But I do like how he keeps things kind of close to his chest and doesn't feel like he needs to be this big corporatized entity, because he has connections to those corporations, as he said in the interview. He has connections to Cirque du Soleil and to Seven Fingers, and again, he was able to make those connections in a grassroots way, not online and not virtually, even though that's also very important, and I'll speak to that next. But he made those connections on the ground, in person. And don't forget that that also very much works. People love to see things up close. They also too told him they were very interested in the cost and the price effectiveness, which you can't go wrong on that, which is, again, smart. But I think, again, if it maintains your ethical center for your company, that's best. But Nathan is really open. I love that he's very open and very genuine about feedback. He has a direct line, you can catch him online. He tries to respond very quickly, and it is him. He loves listening and hearing what people have to say. And he doesn't want to be so far removed from his product and from the sourcing of his product and from the marketing of his product that he loses the connection with it. I would also like to say too, I've seen a lot of products out there where once the main owner is gone, the soul of the product is gone. And people wonder why. And it's because the energy that they held is so powerful. So even all those things that Nathan could hire a lot of different companies to do for him, he's decided not to, because it inspires him to do it. He's like, I love it. I love doing it. I love figuring those things out. And I think that I get all these different ideas because I'm the person that's doing them, which I think there's really something to that. As much as we want to say that you need to do this and this to get more people to buy your products, it can come in indirectly in ways that are also too maintaining your integrity and keeping you connected and happy with what you're doing. And then it'll give you more ideas about what to do and where to go next. Nathan was telling me that the original inspiration for one of his commercials that went viral was based upon a commercial he saw for a men's razor. And the commercial was so funny that people were sending it out to all of their friends, not realizing that they were actually selling a product and then interested afterwards in buying that product. They didn't even really get that it was an advertisement because it was just so funny. So Nathan has done a lot of different unique things with the very niche products. Again, he knows his clientele. You know your clientele if you're interested in selling a circus product, something that's viable. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, as Nathan has shown. You can build upon something that's already there, gratefully so, for those that innovated before to give you the idea to innovate even better. But I think improving on something is really important, because I've seen circus companies out there that kind of have what they have and they're not interested in changing any aspect of it, even if they know that it doesn't really work very well and it costs people a lot of money, of which we don't have. Also, other things, when you want them more custom, are super, super expensive, and so maybe out of your reach as well. So again, those are important things to keep in mind if you're going to be selling a product, and realizing, that you're selling a story, that you're selling a part of yourself. It's not something that you're just out to get popular off of, or make a lot of money on the cheap from. And you can do that, but I stress, and for our environment, it usually is not the thing that can really be done easily, because people know quality in our environment, and that's what makes it such a cool environment, and so niche, and so interesting, and so consistent. And I would love to see it continue to be like that, where what you put out there, word gets around fast, in terms of if it works or not, or if it's great. And again, I would stress to stay away from gimmicks and actually use things for yourself, which Nathan stressed as well. You know how well the product is by the way that people are actually using it, and it works. If you're getting results from it, it means something. And if you're not, it might be a gimmick. So ask an acrobat so that you can think like an acrobat. Here are the top 5 takeaways from Let's Sell for Ourselves, Mastering the Circus Product with Nathan Price. Number 1, do it cheap and do it quick instead of trying to make the product perfect. Number 2, make a good product. Don't fall for gimmicks or fads. Be focused on making something better. Number 3, grassroots advertising does work. Don't make online marketing your sole focus. Number 4, read the book Lean Startup. And number 5, react quickly to customer demands or feedback, and be available with a direct line to the company. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Think Like an Acrobat, where we learned how to sell for ourselves with creator of AcroGrip, Nathan Price. Please make sure to send in your video or audio questions about future episodes to news@CircusTalk.com. Stay tuned for the next episode of Think Like an Acrobat with your host, Shenea Stiletto.